morning and welcome to my webinar this morning on the 25 must-haves for your website in 2025. If you have any connection issues, if you can't hear or see me, please just pop a note in the chat. But otherwise, I'll assume everyone can hear and see me and we will make a start. So quick introduction to myself, just in case you're kind of new to myself or Webbox. So my name is Will. I founded a digital agency back in 2008, and I've helped clients such as Fevertree, NHS Wales, WRU, St John Ambulance and DS Smith and others to define their requirements and deliver website projects and paid media campaigns. And over the last 16 years, we've built up a heck of a lot of data and insights on what works and what doesn't work when it comes to your websites. And hopefully it's that insight and that experience that I'm going to share with you today and what makes up these 25 must-haves. Now, a few house rules, just so you kind of know a few things before we begin. We are recording this session, so we'll send a copy of that out to you afterwards. It is going to be really fast-paced, so forgive me, I'm going to be scratching the surface of these topics today, but if you want a deep dive afterwards, please feel free to contact me. Now, there are going to be a few points where I just ask for some hands up, so I'm not going to embarrass anyone, but I would love you to get involved, and you can do that using the feature within Zoom where it allows you to put your hand up. So if you're able to get involved in those moments, I'd really appreciate it. And finally, if you want to share your feedback, I'd love that. You can get us on socials at Webbox Digital. Now, this talk is split into 6 sections. So hopefully as a marketer, you will have an understanding of each 6, but it might be that you specialize in one particular area. So if that's the case, look out for your section, and I'm sure those must-haves will be highly applicable for you. So let's jump straight into it. We're going to start with the first section, which is design, and I've got 6 must-haves for the design of your site. And the first is having a data-driven user experience. Now, as user expectations become increasingly demanding, web designers are having to focus more on UX design than ever before. Now, this involves creating websites that are intuitive and easy to navigate for all users, regardless of their technical expertise. Now, we haven't got time to go into the detail of this, but if you want a quick kind of 3-step guide on how to achieve this, then these are the 3 steps that we'd recommend. Now, you can start by defining a user-centered UX strategy. Understand the different audience types that come to your website and the user journey that each might take. And document that and make sure that that's embedded within your navigation and your user experience of your site. Then start to put tracking in place and leverage behavioral insights so that you can learn from the data. And third, this is an absolute must. Don't just leave it there. Continuously improve your website based on the data that you're gathering. Now, number 2 is a mobile-first design. Now, hopefully no one's surprised by the fact that I've just mentioned this. Now, if you're in the process of designing a new website, consider taking a mobile-first design approach. Now, what this actually means is designing for mobile before you consider what the website would look like on a desktop device. So everything would scale up from the mobile view. Now, what you can see on screen are some screenshots in terms of where it's comfortable for people to stretch their thumb. And this is important to understand in the process because where there's orange or red zones, you need to make sure that important information or call to actions are not placed in those zones because you need people to be able to access that content really easily. Now, you might want to decide with your agency if this is the right approach for you, because sometimes people struggle to look at a mobile design and imagine what that would look like on a desktop, especially within B2B. So it might be that you ask your agency to present both mobile and desktop design concepts to you at the same time. The third must-have is micro interactions and cursors. And this just gives you a quick example as to kind of what that is. So on the left of the screen, we've got a micro interaction where you're clicking a button and the button is animating to show you that something is happening behind the scenes. And on the right-hand side, we've got animated cursors, where as you hover over the navigation, an image is shown. Now, I appreciate this is a verbose example, but it just demonstrates the point of what an animated cursor is. Now, why would you include these things on your site? Well, if you ever clicked on a button and wondered if anything is actually going on in the background, and you get frustrated because you keep clicking. Now, obviously, to avoid that, what you want to do is start to put in micro interactions into your site to make sure that people understand that the website is doing something in the background after they've clicked. Now, in terms of cursors, a practical example of how you could achieve this would be if you have videos on your website. When your mouse hovers over the video, you could change the cursor to a play icon. And then when the video is playing, you would change the icon to a pause icon. Really simple way to implement it, but what it will ultimately do is boost the engagement of your content on your website. So it's really important to think about how you could implement this on your website. Now, the fourth must-have is a phrase we've actually coined here at Webbox, which is true reflection design. If you ever kind of walk down the street, you might see a car like this and you would have a perception of the person who drives it. Maybe they've done well in life, maybe they like nice things, they like quality and so on. Or maybe you get invited round for tea to a friend's house and they open their front door and what's in front of you is this. And you think, wow, this is someone who cares about their house, who has the financial backing to buy a house like this, who keeps it clean and really cares about what their house looks like. And have you ever landed on a website like this and you think to yourself, there's no consideration to user experience, it's really cluttered, it looks dated, and so on. Now, we've all been there. I'm sure we've all landed on a website like that. And this is really what this true reflection design point is about. It's understanding that first impressions count. When we land on a website, all of us will have an impression of that business straight off the bat. And it's important that it's the right impression. Now, if you ask internal stakeholders or others in your marketing team, for feedback on your website, if we're brutally honest, they're not going to give the kind of feedback that you need, because let's face it, they want to keep their job or keep credibility. Okay, so what we need is to sometimes get outside guidance and advice on actually what is the perception of our website and its design. Because if anything, you have the ability for your website to elevate your position in the market. So ensure that it is a true reflection of your business and it elevates your position rather than the complete opposite. Now, the fifth must-have is including dark mode on your website. Now, you might have seen kind of dark mode on websites where it allows the user to toggle between light and dark mode colors. Now, obviously, this looks nice. A lot of our team here prefer to actually browse websites in dark mode. But there's lots of other benefits to it as well, in that on mobile devices, it can help save battery life as well. But there's another really important reason why we would encourage you to have dark mode on your website. And that is from an accessibility perspective, which I'll touch on a little bit later. But actually allowing people to switch between light and dark mode is not just a preferential thing, but for those with visual impairments, it will help them to navigate your website a little bit easier. And the sixth must-have within this section is intuitive navigation. So often we come across websites and it's really difficult to find the content that you're looking for. It's really difficult just to navigate around the site, and ultimately that just leads to drop-offs and people leaving the site altogether. So what do we do to address that? We'll start with thinking about your navigation in these three topic areas. Think about it from a layout perspective. Should your navigation be full screen so that when you open it via a hamburger icon, for example, it takes over the full screen and allows people to look at the navigation. Now that example is actually what you can see on the slide there on the right-hand side, where once you've opened up a navigation, you can see nothing else other than the navigation. You could also think about just keeping your navigation in the header of a website and just keeping each of the links across the top. Or there's other ways to do it as well, thinking about should it be sticky as the user scrolls down the website. But these are all things that you need to consider and make the best choice for your business. So that's layout. Second is hierarchy. Think about what needs to be within that top navigation and what could potentially be within a sublink or a secondary navigation or even a footer navigation. Because do you know what? Not everything can go in your top navigation. You know, we see really busy navigations all of the time. And actually what that does is just confuse the user because they've just got so many options to select from. Okay, so think about the hierarchy and be quite pragmatic with that decision. And third of all, is content. So again, we see websites all the time that have jargon or industry terminology within the navigation, which actually only makes sense within your business or within your sector. Now that might be okay if you're within a niche and your target audience is a niche audience, but actually for the majority of businesses that doesn't work well. So think about the terminology which you use within your navigation and make that simple for people to digest. Now a quick tip if we've got any service-based businesses here today. So, you know, we see time and time again large lists of services on your websites. So often on the navigation, it will say services, and underneath that, you will list 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 sometimes different services that your business provides. And that's all well and good if the user knows what service they want. But actually, they might be coming to you because they know they've got a challenge and hopefully you can address that challenge. So start to think in solutions or challenges rather than services. Let me give you a really practical example just using Webbox's services. I could talk to you about website design and UX and development, paid media, PPC, and so on. And you might know that you need that service. But actually, you might just come to us and you say, do you know what, we need more leads and inquiries, or we need more automation between our website and CRM. These are challenges which people can relate to. Now, under the hood, whether that needs PPC, or whether it needs SEO, or whether it needs web development, that's really for a further conversation. So start thinking in solutions and put that within your navigation, and what you will find is people can digest that much quicker, and it should boost your leads. Now let's move into the second section. We've got 4 must-haves here, all relating to the content on your website. Now the first of those is having a clear proposition. Now if we're really honest, when we land on this website here, you probably couldn't tell me what this business does unless you know this brand. But I would imagine the vast majority of you here today wouldn't be sure what this business does. But also to flip this on ourselves, and I won't pick on anyone today, but if we asked ourselves the question, actually, what is it that our business does? And can we summarize that within a really short sentence? Because that is far easier said than done. So having a clear proposition, this is really about not leaving the user to guess what it is that you do. It's not leaving the user to navigate 3, 4, 5 of your web pages before understanding what it is that you do. It's making sure that they know from the outset what it is that you do and why they should be dealing with you. And we call that having a clear proposition. And ideally, that would be on your homepage and above the fold, meaning people don't have to scroll down to see it. So think about what your killer one-liner is, put that on your homepage above the fold, and what it should result in is a reduce in bounce rate because people understand what it is that you do straight off the bat. Now, the 8th must-have is brand transparency. Now, we've seen a rise in UX that is centered around demonstrating a brand's ethics, showing the user how exactly products are made or services are provided. Now, in practice, this might be the example we've got on screen, where there's labels highlighting the sustainable materials used, or how products are delivered. Now, that could be talking about your team and your team's experience if you're within a service-based business. But this transparency starts to drop the kind of facade of your website, and it makes you more trustworthy and has an air of transparency so that you're not a cold website, but actually you're a real business, a living and breathing business that people can contact and get in touch with. Now, the 9th must-have is interactive storytelling. So I've got a quick example on screen here just to show you how, as you navigate down a web page, you can see there's videos, imagery, text, animations, and so on. And what it should do is it should actually kind of engage you within the content more and more as you continue to navigate down that page. Now, why would you do this? Well, do you know what? I would much rather scroll down a web page and be engaged that way than read 4, 5, 6 paragraphs of text. Let's be honest, okay? We digest content differently nowadays, and we need to ensure that our websites serve up content in the most digestible way. Also, people buy people. So it's really important that you're telling a story on your website. Now, this might be about your heritage or about the business, what you offer, or how you deliver it. But ultimately, businesses don't just do business with businesses. They do businesses with people. And this authenticity needs to come through your website in its content, primarily through a technique we call interactive storytelling. Now, the 10th must-have is interactive features. Now, you need to turn your site users from boredom into being engaged. Now, there's a few ways in which you can do that, but ultimately you need to think about the content and the functionality on your website to keep people engaged. Now, for some people here, that might be including a calculator, some quizzes, a custom planner, ticket selectors, configurators, and there's loads of examples that I could go on with. But this is how you get people to actually engage with you on your website. So they're clicking around, maybe putting numbers in or putting content into a form, and they're engaging with you rather than just glazing through content with zero engagement. Now, this is really important in order to get people engaging with your brand and ultimately leading them to that conversion point. Okay, I said this is going to be fast-paced. I hope everyone's still with me. We'll get into the next section, which is marketing, and I'm going to be on my 11th must-have, which is technical SEO. So there's a turbulent change in store, if we're really honest, because actually Google search is evolving at a rapid rate at the moment. There are so many things changing within Google, from its layout through to its kind of AI algorithms, through to serving AI results above anything else on the SERP. There are a plethora of things going on, and it's very difficult to keep up. But one thing stands consistent in all of that, and that is technical SEO. Making sure that your website's architecture, its coding, its best practices are in place, okay? So I've got some things on screen here. I won't go through each one because of time, but these are things that you need to make sure that you have addressed on your website. But the key takeaway for this point is that technical SEO is not a one-off exercise. Technical SEO is something which should be constantly worked on and evolved because there are always new things that you could be doing to enhance the technical SEO of your site. This is a big topic, so if you want to chat to me afterwards about that, feel free. Okay, the 12th must-have is landing pages. Now, hopefully we've all got landing pages on our website. And the example I'm going to show you today is of the one of Apple's landing pages for the Apple Watch Ultra. Now, if you're anything like me, you'll scroll down this page, you'll see the kind of animations and the video, you'll understand how the product is made, the benefits and features of the watch, and right at the end, you've got a call to action to buy. And I'll be the first person to click it because it just elevates the product. It makes you feel like you want it, and it really does engage the user. So put simply, landing pages are an absolute must-have for your website. But we need to take inspiration from some of the leading people doing this in terms of how to structure a landing page ultimately to generate conversions for your business. Okay, so a couple of things here just to leave you with. So when you put a landing page in place, the last thing you want to do is leave it in place, okay? You must evolve that landing page based on the data that you're gathering to constantly enhance and hopefully increase the number of inquiries that you get through that landing page. And the second tip is making sure that it integrates with your CRM. Now, it's really important that you do that, because what you don't want to be doing is when a lead comes in, you're manually passing that information through to a salesperson, or you're manually putting it into your CRM. That is the last thing you need to be doing. And I'm going to touch on automations later on, but please make sure that your landing pages are integrated with your CRM. The 13th must-have is call to actions. Now, you might say to me, well, this is a really obvious point. Of course, my website needs call to actions. But I would challenge that to actually say that the number of websites we look at where the call to actions are not obvious, often hidden, is through the roof. And therefore, this is a really important must-have for your website now and in the future. But if we can take this point one step further, I would also encourage you to think about secondary call to actions. So if you think about this in terms of a marketing funnel, at the top of the funnel, users aren't ready to convert at that point. They're not ready to buy, they're not ready to inquire, they're not ready to arrange a meeting, and so on and so forth. So at the top of the funnel, you need to think about what you can do to engage them. Now, that might be downloading a document or an ebook, a white paper, going to an event, and so on. These are really important things for you to consider as call to actions, and again, to feed into your CRM and for you to nurture people so that when they're ready and when they've had maybe a number of interactions with your brand, they will then go to the bottom of the funnel, which is hopefully the inquiry that you're looking for. So yeah, call to actions, think about it in terms of primary call to actions and secondary call to actions, and think about how that will work on your website. Now, little kind of test, and this is not scientific by any means, but we always encourage people to look away from the screen and then look back at the screen and ask yourself, what was my attention drawn to? If it was drawn to really important content or call to actions and so on, then that's great. But actually, if it was just drawn to something irrelevant or not important, or actually your eyes weren't drawn to anything because there's so much clutter on the website, then there's obviously work to be done. So it's a little bit of a self-test that you can do, very light-hearted, but it should give you an indication as to whether your call to actions are clear or not. Okay, believe it or not, we're halfway through. Hope everyone's still awake and with me, and we'll get on to number 14, which is advanced tracking. Okay, so this is your opportunity if you're able to use the raise hands feature in Zoom just to get involved. So when it comes to advanced tracking, can you just pop your hands up if you use Google Analytics for tracking on your website? So hands up if you're currently using Google Analytics. Okay, lots of you. That's really good. Excellent. Can you keep your hands up if you use event or e-commerce tracking within GA4? So if you don't use this, pop your hand down, but keep your hand up if you're using event or e-commerce tracking. Okay, so just under half who originally put their hand up. Okay. Again, keep your hand up if an action is triggered after a conversion is tracked. So this would be, just to give an example, maybe an email gets fired off after a conversion is tracked. Okay, way less than half. Okay, we're down to a handful now. Okay, and then finally, keep your hands up if your website or marketing is adapted after a conversion is tracked. Wow, okay, only two. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so actually, thank you for getting involved, by the way. But this is what I mean, right, by advanced tracking. So this is understanding exactly how people are using your website. Whether they sneeze on your website, you need to know about it, okay? That's the phrase I always use, okay? So this is far more than just putting in GA4 and then thinking that you've ticked the box. This is actually about understanding that you need event tracking in place so that you know which buttons are being clicked. You might put Hotjar in place so you see how people are engaging with your site, how far down they're scrolling. You can then actually watch recordings of how they're interacting with your site, so on, so forth. Okay, there's loads of things you can do. Again, time doesn't allow me to go into each of them today. But advanced tracking is really important for all of us to have in place. Now, what I would also kind of then say is, what are we doing with that data? Okay, so once we've got advanced tracking set up, which is a massive tick in the box, well done if you've got that. What are we doing with that data? It's really important to actually be regularly reviewing it, analyze the data, and to make improvements off the back of it. Now, I've got a few little top tips for you. The first is make sure this data feeds into Google Looker Studio dashboard. This is a great way to pull in data from GA4 and other paid media channels all into one dashboard, and ultimately to highlight the KPIs which are most important to your business. The second is if you're maybe struggling to gather as much data as you'd like, it might be because actually not many people are accepting cookies when they land onto your website. So again, a little top tip to address that. You could move the cookies acceptance box into the middle of the screen so that when someone lands on your website, that's right front and center in their face, and they need to make a decision as to whether they accept or reject cookies at that point before navigating around the website. Because what we find is if that is just at the bottom of a site and a really thin bar across the bottom, people can often miss it. So it's not even like they want to reject the cookies, they just miss it because they don't see it. So it's important that you put that front and center to hopefully drive more people to opt in to tracking. And again, if you're struggling with GA4, we have got a guidance doc. If you want to take a little snap of that QR code, feel free to do so. It'll take you to a downloads page where we've got a load of resources, one of them being a GA4 guidance doc, and I can share this with you afterwards as well. Okay, moving into functionality, we're going to have 4 must-haves all about the functionality of your website. So 15th must-have is personalization. So I'm going to play a little video here just so you've got an example of what I mean. So on the left-hand side of the screen, a particular user sees one version of a web page, but on the right-hand side, the other user sees a different version of that web page. Now the web page is the same. It's the same URL, but different content and imagery is being served up to 2 different users through personalization. Now, first of all, why do we do this? Well, we need to understand that not all users are the same. Okay, so we all like different things. We read different amounts of content, all the way down to different colors. We prefer all the way down to we're all based in different locations. All of these things can be considered when thinking about personalizing the content on your website. Now, let's just talk about a really elementary example just to demonstrate this point. If you've got offices all over the UK, start to detect the user's location and serve up on your contact page the address, the nearest address to where I am located, and also serve up the phone number which is most local to me. You can still list the other addresses and numbers, but they would be underneath the one that I'm closest to. That's one way to make the website contact page feel more relevant to me. Another easy example is when you're reading blog content. Understanding what the user is reading and what they're most interested in will allow you to serve up more relevant content. So related blog posts could not just be the ones that you're selecting in your CMS, but actually they're selected based on what that user has been previously reading. Okay, so personalization is a really good way to boost the UX and engagement on your site so people feel like you're serving up more relevant content. Little pro tip for you, if you're looking to put this into your website, check out a platform called Personalize. It's a great way to start to plumb in some of the mechanics behind this, and it can be plumbed into a number of different CMSs. All right. Now, the 16th must-have is AI. And let's be honest, it is a huge booming topic at the moment, and I just simply don't have time to go into it now, so I'm going to scratch the surface. Now, do you know what I see so often within the industry, within our client base, speaking to other marketers, they're just using the gimmicky stuff. Okay, so what they're doing is they're saying, oh, here's an image of one of our team. What does one of our team look like as Santa? And they'll generate that image, share it around, everyone has a little chuckle. And then they say, but what would it look like if we had a beard on our Santa? And this is the kind of stuff that we're using AI for at the moment, which is funny, it's great, but I've got to say, we've got to start using it for the stuff which is going to move the needle, enhance the user experience, and ultimately generate you more inquiries through your site. Now, the other thing I want to say is, don't let AI do everything. You are the marketer. You're experienced in that field, okay? So you're the marketer. AI is simply the enabler. Really important that we understand that principle as marketers so that we're not completely hands-off. We need to be defining the strategy and the direction. We need to be doing the really kind of higher level stuff. And look, if you want to use AI for some of the kind of more admin tasks, some maybe content creation, but it must be edited by you afterwards, then that's fine. But make sure that we're still in control of the stuff which actually really matters within our roles day to day. So here's a few starting points in terms of how you could use AI effectively on your site. Now, within the CMS, it could be integrated within your content editor to help you write content and give you suggestions. It could also generate metadata automatically, and then again, you could proof it and edit it. And it can also generate all of your alt tags. So if this is something you struggle to meet from an accessibility perspective, you could have all of your alt tags generated using AI. Now, on the front end, it should be used for things like content suggestions, as I've just mentioned previously, for personalization. It could also power your search so that when people are searching on your site, the results are more relevant to how they've been navigating around your site. And again, delivering personalized content so that it's more tailored to the user's preferences. These things will move the needle from both an administration perspective and an engagement perspective. So please focus on those things and remember that you're the marketer, AI is just the enabler. Now, the 17th must-have is relating to forms, and I'm going to just touch on two types of forms. The first is full screen forms. So if you're looking to boost engagement with your forms because maybe the conversion rate is quite poor, try using a full screen form. Now, what we do with a full screen form is it takes over the whole screen, but also importantly removes the navigation. So what it does is it removes distractions from the user and ultimately boosts conversions. So this is something you can have a look at. If you're looking for a platform to help you with this, I'd really encourage you to have a look at Typeform, one of the leading form providers that specializes in full screen forms, and they've got a great kind of setup that you can take a look at. Number two is progressive lead forms. So this is us understanding that actually, if we need quite a bit of information from our users, they're probably not going to give it to us on their first visit. So if you're going to present them with a form where there's 10, 15, 20 fields, the likeliness of them completing that form is slim, unless it is something which is really engaging or they actually need to fill that form out. So we need to think about how we can get this information off users, but in a different way. And that's where progressive lead forms comes in. So start on their first visit by asking for the essential information. So maybe they're signing up for your newsletter. So maybe you want to just ask for their first name and email address. Now, when they come back to your website for the second time, we recognize that user and we say, well, we've already got your name and email address. So actually this time round, what we'd love is your job title and the company that you work for, as an example. Now, this information is collected, obviously voluntarily as they come back to the site each time. And if they fill out that form, it will continue to drip feed information into your CRM, enhancing the data that you collect. But you should see conversions increase if you take this approach rather than overwhelming people with a really large form up front. 18th must-have is real-time updates. The last thing you want, right, is someone to come onto your website and actually think to themselves, this is just out of date, there's nothing relevant here, no one's looked after this website for a while. That is awful. Actually, what you want to do on the flip side of that is create a sense of urgency or a sense of this FOMO, kind of fear of missing out, okay? Now, one way that you can do that is start to think about actually what could we show on our website in real time that would aid the user. So I'm just going to use an e-commerce example, if I may. You might land on a website and it says something like, we've got 14 of these left in stock, or it might allow you to check the stock of a local store. Again, that would be real-time data. Or it might say 14 people have bought this product in the last hour. So you're thinking, wow, it's popular, that's great. These are the kind of things that you can include on your site to create that sense of FOMO and get people to engage with you more. Now, my next section is what I'm calling behind the scenes, okay? So forget the front end for now. Think about the things that go on with the website behind the scenes. So often, this is rarely discussed, but important for a smooth running of your website. And I've just got 3 points in this section. So, choosing the right CMS for your project. You know, so often clients might come to us and through them coming through the onboarding process here at Webbox, they'll share that actually the CMS is not working for them. Potentially it's kind of cumbersome to use, really restrictive. And actually when we deep dive into that, it wasn't their choice. Maybe the provider or agency suggested it to them. It's really important that you're in the driving seat of that decision, or at least collaborating with the agency on that decision. And I tell you why, because you're the one using your CMS day to day, not the agency. Okay, so it's really important that it's a CMS that works for you and your business. Okay, now you want to think about things like, is it scalable? Is it secure? Is there license fees involved? Could I integrate with a new platform, next year if that's what the plans are? These are things that we need to kind of ask ourselves objectively to make sure that the right CMS is being used on your website. Now, if you need some help choosing the right CMS, again, we've got a document for that. And what it does is it actually compares some of the leading CMSs side by side and objectively just talks about the pros and cons of each of them. So again, you can use that QR code and I'll send this to you later on as well. And you can have a look at that document if that's helpful for you at that point. The 20th must-have is intelligent automation, okay? I've mentioned before, haven't I, that actually the last thing you want to be doing is manually taking leads from your website into your CRM. And you know what? With the likes of various automations, AI, MarTech being available to us these days, actually we need to think about making our websites more sophisticated in terms of the automations in which it can handle for us, okay? Now, what I would just encourage you to do is start to think about what you're doing manually day to day. So is that, I don't know, taking orders and giving them to the warehouse? Is that maybe putting inquiries into the CRM, so on and so forth? Create a list that's relevant for you in your day-to-day, and then put that in order in terms of what's actually a priority for you at the business to address, or maybe put it in order in terms of how long each of these things take you day-to-day. And then start to work with your agency or developer to make your website do the heavy lifting and take these things off your day-to-day task list, because all of these things, if not the majority, will be possible for your website to achieve for you. Now, the 21st must-have is security and redundancy. Do you know what? Cyber attacks become increasingly sophisticated. Our developers need to focus more on creating secure websites that protect users' information. Now, there's lots of things which go into this, and some of it can be a bit technical and boring, so I won't bore you with that today. But actually, it's really important that you do take some time to consider the measures that are in place on your website to keep it secure. But also, if the worst case scenario did happen and a website was compromised, what do you have in place when it comes to redundancy? So is your website backed up? And if so, how frequently? And also, how long would it take to restore? So on and so forth. These are questions which are worth asking now rather than after a difficult situation has happened. Now, coming on to the last section, which is experience. So this is really focusing on the UX of a website. And you know what? The first point is accessibility, and rightly so. It is really important that our websites are accessible. Again, just final show of hands. Can you just pop your hands up using the raise hands feature in Zoom if you considered accessibility during the build of your website? Okay, so I've got about a third, give or take, maybe just under. Okay, so thank you for being involved. So yeah, it's not many, if we're really honest, okay? And what I want to do today is, if I do nothing else, is just blow away a myth, which is accessibility matters only to public sector websites. It absolutely doesn't. Accessibility should be at the heart of all of our website builds, period. Okay, it's really important that we make our websites accessible to the widest range of users. Now, this can be front-end features, like allowing people to change font size or contrast or colors, all the way through to the back-end coding and making sure things are tagged correctly and people can tab through a website. These are things which are important for a wide range of users. Now, just to leave you with something to look at afterwards, I would Google the WCAG 2.2 guidelines. They came out last year, and it'd be really good for you to understand what those guidelines are, and obviously to benchmark your websites to understand where you are in that journey. Now, the 23rd must-have is page speed, right? So who loves a slow website? No one, okay? What we need is speed and power. We need a website to be quick to load, okay? And if we're really honest, we're quite, impatient. Most users won't wait more than 3 or 4 seconds before actually clicking the back button, and they'll probably just go onto a competitor's website. We are not in the position to just wait around as your website loads, okay? Now, page speed isn't just important from that perspective, but also important because it is a big SEO ranking factor. So Google have a tool, it's called Page Speed Insights. You can use that QR code to access it, and it allows you to put your website into it, and it will give you a score out of 100. Now, ultimately, you need to be minimum 80%, but actually to be within the green zone where Google are saying this is acceptable, you actually need to be above 90%. So it's really important that you consider your page speed. And once you've got it to a point where it's acceptable, again, this is something which needs to be reworked because it will naturally degrade over time. So it's important to keep page speed high on your agenda. Now, the 24th must-have is chatbots, and if we're really honest, some of us love them, some of us absolutely hate them, but they are here to stay. So actually, we all want that self-service ability because actually we might be browsing the website outside of working hours, or we might just have a quick question, which actually chatbots can often answer. So actually having a chatbot and making sure that it's powered with enough information and enough data to be valuable to your audience is important. But my big top tip here is actually allow people to move from that chatbot experience into live chat if the chatbot is not fulfilling their request. There's nothing worse than being frustrated with a chatbot because it's not understanding your questions or it hasn't got the right answer. That frustrates everyone, and I'm not a fan of that, okay? But if you allow someone at that point in the journey to say, look, do you want to speak to one of our team? Now, that's very different because the chatbot has tried. If it didn't work, allow people to move through to that experience and actually speak to someone either live or through a ticketing system. So if you've got a chatbot on your site, maybe have a think about how you can incorporate those features within your chatbot. Now, the 25th must-have for your website in 2025 is voice user interface design. I'm sure we've all seen it. Google were one of the first to come out with it, where they allow you to use that microphone icon on the right-hand side in that image to speak into their website. And you can actually then do a voice search. Now, of course, with the rise of Siri, Alexa, Google Home, and so on, we're now far more familiar with speaking to a device. And this principle is now moving into websites. So allow your audience to either speak into your website and potentially search the site, or make sure that your content is geared up so that actually if they're doing a voice search on Google, your content is more conversational and relevant to that search. So there's a number of ways in which you can implement this, but if you're wanting just to start on that journey, why not start with just implementing a voice search on your site? So really a simple thing to begin with, and if that works and through tracking you can see people are engaging with it, after that maybe there's other ways in which you can bring this kind of design aspect through on your site. Now, believe it or not, that is the 25 must-haves for your website in 2025. Just a few things before we wrap up. The first is, I've mentioned a number of resources throughout the talk today. Now I'm going to send you a link shortly where you can actually go and download all of these documents and guides. We've got a whole bank of things which are just kind of geared up for helping you make the most out of things like paid media, GA4, writing a website brief, so on and so forth. So I will send you a link to those later, and I hope those resources are useful for you. The second is at Webbox, we offer a digital audit like no other. So you might have come across various audit tools where they allow you to put your website in and it comes back with an automated report. Our audits couldn't be further from that. You know, we take the time to manually go through your website or paid media campaign, and our team with specialist skills here will audit the good, bad and ugly, and then arrange a call with you to present and play back our findings to you. So if you'd find that process useful, and it's completely free, again, feel free to use that QR code, and we'd love to arrange an audit for you. And again, I'll follow up with a link later on. And then finally, as you can imagine, we run a number of these webinars. We've got lots of topics coming up over the next 2 months or so. Some of those are on screen. Again, if any of those are relevant for you or anyone in your team, feel free to share the Eventbrite link around your businesses. We'd love to have you on our upcoming webinars. So for now, I just want to say a massive thank you for joining this webinar today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And I will follow up shortly with a recording and all of the resources. But for now, thank you and have a good rest of your day.